Hi there, my name is Gabriel Aloisi, and I hope that you are having an enjoyable session. I'm the host of the Branding Podcast, also the author of the best-selling book on branding, Moving Targets, Creating Engaging Brands in an On-Demand World. My good friend Joran Jenkins asked me to give you a little introduction on branding today. So without further ado, let's get right into this little mini presentation. So we're going to go over some quick tips on branding. We're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes here. The first lesson that I want to give to you is that superior products don't always win. The best brands win when we talk about business. And the example you see there is a pair of shiny, bright red Beats headphones. If you don't know much about the brand Beats, it's a very niche brand that got popular with millennials and young folk, because what they decided to do is not necessarily create the best sounding headphones, because if you've ever heard a pair of Beats headphones, they're not necessarily the best. You could probably get better sound from a nice Bose headphone or a premium audio brand. But they became a fashion statement, and they built this brand that has now become iconic as a fashion symbol for young folks. So they didn't necessarily build the most superior product, they built the best brand. Another quick lesson for you is Rolex. And the lesson here is best prices don't always win. Again, the best brands win. Can you get a watch that tells better time than Rolex? Yes. A quartz watch, a cheap Timex or a $10 quartz watch right off the shelf is actually going to tell you better time. But Rolex has built a brand full of prestige and something that people aspire to. So again, it's not necessarily about the price or the functionality of your product. It's about being the best brand. What is a brand? It's really the way you're perceived in the marketplace. It's a conglomeration of everything about who you are and the feeling and emotion that you give to the customer or consumer of your product or service. Every brand has a few key ingredients. Number 1, differentiation. Number 2, relevance. Number 3, esteem. And number 4, knowledge. We're going to dive into each one of these very quickly for you so you can sort of get a big picture on what branding and the key ingredients to branding are. Differentiation is the first pillar. And very simply, differentiation is what makes you and your company or firm unique. Do you have the most experience? Are you niched in some way to be specific to your clientele? You have a particular area of practice that you're the expert in. Whatever it is, it's what makes you or your company or firm unique. Very simple. Every great brand has great differentiation. It's great to have great differentiation, but if you don't have our next thing, which is relevance, it doesn't matter. So relevance is, are your differences relevant to the market? The example I like to use here is if I was going to go down to the FedEx store and mail a package, or down to the post office and mail a package, and there were 2 boxes. One was a white box for $2 and the other one was a brown box for $3. Would I choose the brown box that's more expensive? Probably not, because in this particular case, while it's different, it's not necessarily relevant at this point in time to me. I just need to get my package from one place to another. So you can be different, but if it's not relevant to your target market, to the person that's going to consume your product or service, it doesn't really help. So make sure that not only are you different, but you're different in a relevant way. The third pillar of branding is esteem. How well regarded are you? We brought up a brand that has a ton of esteem, Rolex. That's what esteem is. It's something that people aspire to. Again, things don't necessarily have to be based on price. Buying decisions aren't necessarily based on price. They're also based on esteem. If it's something that I strive for, I'll save up the money to get it because that's what I want. And esteem helps brands do that. Number 4 on our pillars of branding is knowledge. Does anyone know about you? So you can have great differentiation, You can be different in a relevant way and people can really admire you. But if no one has ever heard of you, it really doesn't matter. The crux of this is knowledge. So, what do we mean by that? It's getting your message out, whether that's social media, traditional marketing channels, networking. Having knowledge is ultimately how a consumer finds a brand and, of course, ends up purchasing a brand. And you've got to make sure that your materials, your marketing materials, your website, all that is chocked full of what I like to call the good stuff, the things that make you unique, different, and relevant. And really, what ties all this together is consistency. And this is the consistency pyramid you see right there on your screen. Consistency is an integral part of branding. It's something deep seated in human psyche that we want to have a consistent experience, whether that's visually, whether that's audibly, whether that's by smell, or really all of those five senses need to be a consistent product. I'll tell you a quick story. About 5 years ago, I took a trip and I was in the Philippines in Southeast Asia. I lived there for the better part of a year. And my island was this little tiny island, 30 miles wide. And we had nothing American on that island. It was really out there. It was tough to get to. It's a 3-day trip to get to this island. And for the most part, it was very secluded. Now, I could actually go about an hour. I could take an hour ferry ride to another island, and they had a McDonald's there. And McDonald's, obviously, not necessarily my first choice, but it was something that was sort of a comfort, a little taste of being back at home. I walked into that McDonald's, I bought a hamburger, a Coke, and a small fry. And guess what? It tasted exactly like the hamburger you would have right here in the United States. We are in this very remote place on an island, and a McDonald's hamburger really sent me and my thoughts rushing back to home because it was just something consistent about it. The taste was consistent and it brought back a memory. So every brand must have consistency because consistency leads to an expectation, and expectation leads to trust, and trust leads to sales. There are some places in your brand to stay consistent. These include the size, color, and placement of any of your logos, the fonts you use and the typography, the ad layouts that you create, any marketing materials and brochures you put together, your television graphics, any PowerPoint presentations you put together, your icons and your imagery that you use on social media, your email blasts and your newsletters, the email signatures of you and your staff, those need to be consistent. And any mobile applications, icons, and graphics, those need to be consistent. Why is consistency so critical? For that same reason, the hamburger in the Philippines was critical to my experience there. I knew what to expect. I knew I could trust the product. And I came back about once every couple months to have that unique product for me, at least living there in that remote island. There is a danger. It's the inverse of being consistent is lack of consistency. There's no expectation, there's eroded trust, and there's poor sales. Here's the example I like to use. Imagine you walk into a steakhouse tonight. And by the way, I'm sorry I'm using so many meat examples for all those vegetarians out there. But let's say you walk into a steakhouse and you order your steak medium rare. And it comes out on the rare side. Well, you might, kind of shove it under the table and say, well, the chef had a bad night or the staff had a bad night. I'll go back there tomorrow. And you go back there tomorrow and you order that same steak and it comes out well done, completely well done. Well, there's no consistency. So you're not going to go back there. You're not going to probably recommend it to your friends because there's no expectation of what you're going to get. You don't have any trust in that brand and you have poor sales. Not only poor sales, but people spread the word when you don't have a consistent product or service. That's why branding is so important. This is really the key that ties it all together. So there you have it. Those are the 5 elements of successful brands. differentiation, relevance, esteem, knowledge, and what ties it all together, consistency. I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you have any questions, you could visit shaketampa.com and get in touch with me. I'd be happy to help.